the greatest JDM cars ever made. That's a pretty bold claim, and this is a pretty bold channel. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And so I put together a list, and I limited myself to 25. I could have done 100, but I got other things to do. And for this video, I'm only giving you the bottom half, 25th to 12th place. If you want the other half, you're gonna have to give this video at least 7,256 likes, or I won't ever make the other one. So hit that like button down below, and while you're down there, subscribe, because I'm about to tell you about one of the most insane cars ever put in a video game. And I'm talking about the Redescudo that we all kind of know from Gran Turismo and not really anywhere else. You see, back in my day, in the old Gran Turismo 2 and 3 days, this was basically the money cheat car. It was a 1,000 horsepower rally car that would do wheelies around the speed ring, and you didn't even really have to be holding the controller to do it. But this crazy hard to pronounce car is actually a real rally car with a lot of horsepower that competed at the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, one of the world's most exciting and dangerous races. Now, sadly, the reason this car is so low on this list is because, well, it never won. It managed to get second place like 4 years in a row. But thanks to it being one of the most interesting cars from my childhood, and basically being responsible for my bank account in Gran Turismo growing up, I wanted to give it a spot on this list. Now, next up is a frickin' Supra. But not just any Supra. One with a frickin' twin-turbo V12. Which, yes, this is totally a thing that exists. And just for the sheer insanity of it, it absolutely has to be on this list. Although it's pretty low because Supra without a 2JZ is just a ugly car. This Supra was built in the dark in the wee morning hours by Smokey Nagata, a big brain over at Greddy at the time, which is why the company that he founded is called Top Secret. He basically built it in secret. But thankfully, the secret is out, and we were able to witness the birth of his V12 Mark IV Supra, which also was witnessed by the police, and he got into a lot of trouble, but that's a whole other story. We should definitely do a video about Smokey Nagata. Now, where did he get that V12? You'd be surprised to know he got it from an old Toyota. Toyota made a V12 powered sedan called the Century, and by all accounts, it's actually not that bad of a motor for a V12. And while this may not seem that crazy today, where engine swaps are basically everything, back when this came out, this was a pretty big deal. Especially when you think about it, he basically took one of the greatest engines ever made out of a car to put in a worse engine. That's why he's on this list, because he's just that creative. Now, on the topic of big-bodied Toyotas, Lexus exists. And why does it exist? Pretty much because of the next car on this list, the Toyota Celsior, or the Lexus LS400 as you probably know it. This is the million-mile luxury cruiser with one of the greatest engines ever made, Toyota's 1UZ. Don't believe me? Just listen to one with a straight pipe. Now, the story behind the birth of Lexus and the incredible engineering of the LS400 would be a fantastic video all on its own. But suffice it to say, on this list, I'm just gonna tell you, it is one of the greatest cars ever, and it's what birthed one of the greatest car brands of all time. The LS400 was engineered in Japan to show that they could compete with the Europeans' best brands. And not only did they compete, they kicked their asses. How many 1990 BMWs do you think you'd wanna buy today? I would gladly take a 30-year-old Lexus over any of them. All right, the LS400, super important, but it's kind of a big boat. So let's talk about what I would call a dinghy. Yes, I'm gonna talk to you about one of the cutest and best sports cars of all time, the Honda S600. If you were alive back in the 50s, which if you're watching Ideal Cars, I can't imagine you were, but if you are, hi Dad. If you were alive back then, you'd have known them as the nice motorcycle company. Seriously, that was like their whole advertising campaign. You meet nice people on a Honda and not like, you know, evil Harley riders. This is why I own a Honda Fit. I'm nice, you guys, I swear. Believe me. Anyway, back then, Honda was making the Honda S500, but it was mostly kind of flat. Nobody was really buying them. But Honda hadn't given up on the automotive market yet, so they slapped a 600cc advanced motorcycle engine inside their S500 and dubbed it the S600. It's a really clever naming convention. And what they had created was basically a Japanese version of an affordable, reliable British sports car. What a novel concept. A car that doesn't break down on you. That's still something that Honda runs corresponds with to this day. So like the LS400, the Honda S600 kind of bred what was the Honda brand. So yes, back in the 60s, the JDM craze pretty much began, and it peaked in the 90s with all these high horsepower legendary cars we all talk about today. And next up, I'm going to talk about one of the cars that I don't think enough people are talking about. And I hope it stays that way because I hope to own one soon. I'm talking about number 21 on my list, the Celica GT4. Yes, this is another rally car on my list. But this one you can actually own. I even recommended you buy it in this video up here. You should watch it after this video. Watch this whole video, then watch this video. Open in another tab, write a little note. Now again, you Gran Turismo nerds probably know this car from Gran Turismo in its classic Castrol livery. But its magic doesn't just stop there in racing. The street car is a beloved car by mountain racers, car show nerds, and classic car collectors. And right now, I don't think you can do better than the ST205 as a used car right now. I think it's practical, it's amazing, it's limited edition. It comes with a little plaque, and it's got rally racing history behind it for less than you'd spend on a GTR, and you'd just be like another GTR guy. But don't buy one because I still need to save up to get one. Now, moving on, I'm going to talk about one of the most iconic tuner cars ever built. You probably know it from Tokyo Drift. I know it from every import tuner car magazine growing up. I'm talking about the Veilside FD RX7. Look, the base model FD3S is one of the most gorgeous cars ever created. I think if you saw one on the street today, you'd see it and you wouldn't even see the supercar behind it. But tuning company Veilside was not satisfied with the bodywork. They wanted to make it even bigger, badder, and more fishy, as they usually do. Veilside took the already elegant and beautiful FD and turned it into a supercar. And they didn't just change the bodywork, this thing was tuned through and through from top to bottom. And I think it deserves a spot on this list because it is one of the most recognizable, most iconic, and one of the most wild tuner cars ever made. And it has been in popular culture for decades now, especially thanks to, you know, Tokyo Drift. Now, from a car that's already been tuned to one of the greatest platforms for tuning that ever existed, I'm going to tell you about the first generation Civic Type R, otherwise known as the EK9 Type R. It's the 6th generation Civic, but it's the first time we got the Civic Type R. And look, my recent foray into front wheel drive might be clouding my lenses a little bit here, but I just think the Civic Type R does so much. And we have the EK9 to thank for it. This is the pinnacle of what front-wheel drive can be. It's front-wheel drive, it handles incredibly, it has just enough power to be fast. When Honda makes a performance car, they make it right. They do not have a bad performance car. And the EK9 Type R birthed a lineage of Type Rs that are just incredible. I mean, the ones that are coming out now are just dominating. And with the next generation of Civic Type R coming, I hope they keep the spirit strong. And speaking of cars that need new generations, I'm talking about number 18 on my list, the Nissan R35 GTR. It's incredible, but it's old as dirt. Which, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, it's still an incredible car. It still keeps up, but God, it's old. And look, we all love the 90s Japanese sports car battle, but I think Nissan was the only one that kept it going through the aughts. I mean, we didn't get an Eclipse. We still haven't gotten a Supra. We kinda got an NSX. There's no more Evo. I mean, Nissan's really the only one carrying the torch right now. And that torch is burning bright with the R35. It's just an incredible piece of machinery, and yes, it's old, but I think it's because it's just so damn good. Now, if you ask me what Nissan is more iconic than an R35 GTR, well, I might be a little biased here as I've owned probably 10 of these. I'm talking about the Nissan Silvia, or a 240SX, or a 180SX, or an S13, S14, S15, whatever you want to call it. It's a Silvia. And back in my day, the Nissan S13 Silvia was the ambassador of drifting. I mean, I know the Corolla A86 started it all, but none of us could afford them, and we all wanted a little more horsepower. So we all had 240SXs, everybody. And I think that's what makes it more iconic to so much more people. It was a Nissan performance car you could actually afford. A lot of us can't even afford the Z. And if you ask me, Nissan's really missing out on not having a cheap rear-wheel drive manual sports car for sale that's under 30,000 bucks. Not that I want to buy one, I just want to buy one used in 10 years when they're like 5 grand, and then drift the shit out of it. So make that car for me, Nissan, please. Now, next up I'm going to talk about a car that is rumored to be making a comeback, and that is the MR2. MR2, and more specifically the SW20, which I think is the MR2 perfected. You see, Toyota had a lot of ups and downs with its mid-engine two-seater, like, you know, having a reputation for being incredibly dangerous. But the second generation, otherwise known as the SW20, is probably the best looking, the most fun to drive. It's got frickin' turbos. And is likely to be remembered as the greatest generation of MR2 ever, if for no other reason than that it had pop-up headlights. They are downright evil to work on, and they're incredibly rare and hard to find. But who cares? This is not about the best 25 cars to buy, this is just the most iconic 25 JDM cars ever, and the SW20 absolutely deserves a spot on this list. And if you are really into MR2s and mid-ship Toyotas, do yourself a favor and look up the Sard MC8R, you know, after you watch this video and a bunch of other videos on our channel first. Now, speaking of unconventional drivetrain layouts for sports cars, I'm going to talk about the greatest front-engined, front-wheel drive car ever made. And yes, it is a Honda again. I'm talking about the DC2 Integra Type R. Right now, the DC2 Integra Type R is starting to become more mythological than the Supra, because it represents what Japan is able to do so well. You see, Japan can take something like a little economy car with a front-wheel drive platform and turn it into one of the fastest, most exciting to drive cars ever made. The DC2 Integra Type R is a grocery getter perfected, and they are absolutely the reason I roll my eyes when all of you guys hate on front-wheel drive cars. It just means you haven't driven a good one, and I know because I'm guilty of that myself. Now, sadly, your opportunity to own one of these is pretty much gone, unless you sold a bunch of Dogecoin recently. Because DC2 prices are through the roof, and they're probably never gonna come back down. But still, if you can afford to pick one up on Bring a Trailer, I think you're owning one of the greatest Japanese cars ever made. Speaking of incredibly expensive Japanese cars, up next at number 14 is one of the most expensive Japanese cars to ever be sold. And I'm talking about the rare, the limited, the iconic Subaru WRX STI 22B. Because look, I am not the biggest WRX fan in the world, so if there's gonna be one on this list, it's gonna be the 22B. Why? Well, first of all, it's the best looking WRX ever built. Fight me, all you owners of the new fat ones, I don't really give a crap. Second, it represents peak Subaru WRX. It was built before the computers took over and all the weight was added with the safety features, and weirdly no power was ever added to compensate. The 22B represents Subaru's rally dominance. It's got 2 doors, it's got a little bit of horsepower, and it's got a cool looking body kit. And more importantly, it's exclusive. Only 400 of them were ever built. And I want one so badly. I basically don't want to own another WRX because I just want the 22B. But I don't know if I'm about to pay 100 grand for an old head gasket eater. No, if I had that kind of money, which I totally don't, I'm spending my money on its competition. That's right, coming in at lucky 13th place is the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 6, specifically the red and white one driven by Tommi Mäkinen. You see, the Rally Art Lancer Evo 6 driven by Mäkinen was a winner. This car dominated rally racing from 1996 to 1999, and looking absolutely gorgeous the entire time. Do you remember when Mitsubishi was amazing? I do. Makes me kind of sad looking back. I mean, I've always dreamed of owning an Evo, and they're getting rare and more expensive by the day. I might never own one. Thankfully though, there's YouTube, and I can just watch people drive Evos around and smoke supercars. As their used car value skyrockets into the 6 figures. C'est la vie. And remember, if you want to see the rest of the cars on my list, you're gonna have to like this video. I'm sorry, this is a transaction. I get paid by how many likes we get. Not really, but I wish. Anyway, coming in at number 12 is one of the most legendary cars to ever rock the GTR badge. In fact, it's the first one to rock the GTR badge. Yes, number 12 is the Nissan GTR Hakusuka. Because this is a list of the most iconic JDM cars ever. And really, there are very few more iconic cars than the Hakusuka. For a car's lineage to live on for 50, 60 years, the Genesis has to be something really special. You see, the GTR proved even back then that Nissan was the Japanese performance brand to beat. And today, they're still number 1. The name Hakusuka stands for Boxy Mountain Road, which is a callback to what they look like, just boxy little mountain road racers. So yes, even before the GTR became Godzilla with the R32, The Nissan GTR was incredible. And for all the GTRs it birthed afterwards, I think the Hakusuka deserves a high spot on this list. Now, what's the rest of the list? You're gonna have to stay tuned to the next one to find out. We're not even in the top 10 yet. So, stay tuned, like the video so that I make the damn thing, subscribe to the channel so that you see when it comes out, buy yourself a damn shirt or join the Ideal Car Strategies, and as it is every time, it's been so ideal to hang out with you guys. See you in the next one.